in front of my face. We are What's Up Wrestling fans. It is the Two Bros Wrestling Show on a wait. What is today, Kevin? What time is it? What's going on here?
It's Monday, and you know what that means.
It's almost time for a 2-hour Raw.
It means Raw is on its way, and we are on a special night in time. Thank you for pivoting with us from our normal Sunday live slot, but we are going to pregame with you. We'll have you ready for Raw. We'll have you good to go, but we want to make sure we have a main event topic this week, Doug, that I think all wrestling fans would be interested in, because while we are getting ready for Raw here in an hour and to, bask more in the Triple H era, we're talking about an era that doesn't get enough attention.
The Shawn Michaels era?
The HBK era, the Shawn Michaels era. That's right. That is our main event topic tonight because, there was another member of DX, and he's doing his thing right now on the creative side, and NXT is firing on all cylinders. We're going to look at what all he has done for the benefit of NXT, how his style is different from Triple H's, how it's the same, how it's working in a way that the prior version of NXT did not. So a lot of good stuff to talk about, but as always, Doug, we begin.
There it is.
We got some news. Obviously, there's always news, but we're going to do some follow-up stories. We'll start with a follow-up to what our main event was last week, and that's AEW's pending TV rights deal. More reporting over this last week continues to peel back the onion of what more might we expect. This time we have some leaking numbers coming out as well. So that's, when we have some ideas of the financials, that's where we want to make sure we dig in, and because that's big news. Specifically, it's in the ballpark of $170 million annually that AEW is expected to receive. The deal is reportedly for 3 guaranteed years with a 4th as an option. It's important to note, though, that 170 it isn't double, which is what we had been hearing, that, it's going to double what they're currently receiving. That had been the rumor. Still, it is a significant increase that would not only secure AEW's immediate future, it would make them, and I think this is the most important and compelling part of all this, is that 170 million, if that ends up being the number, would make them the second most financially successful wrestling promotion in the history of professional wrestling, second obviously only to WWE. That's not a small bragging point. I mean, let us old school fans remember, WCW was kind of a big deal back in the day.
It was indeed kind of a big deal, and I can just hear Bischoff screaming from, far out west right now and yelling at Conrad Thompson about this.
AEW has been around for 5 years. If in 5 years you can secure yourself a TV rights deal that makes you the second most financially successful promotion in the history of the business, that's something that you can hang your hat on.
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely some bragging rights, and for all those folks that are AEW's done, AEW's going out of business, AEW's crap, personal feelings aside, the facts say otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. The facts say otherwise. Other details that are leaking indicate the AEW programming is going to remain on TBS, TNT, with the addition of True TV, which Warner Brothers is trying to rebrand as a sports network. No word if that True TV broadcast will be replays of the TBS, TNT shows or some sort of original content. The rumors also continue that AEW is pitching a package to broadcast channels, trying to diversify in the same way that Vince McMahon, Triple H and WWE has. That would mean that whole Fox thing we talked about last show is maybe a possibility. That the Shockwave show that's been rumored may be being pitched to Fox to air on an FS1, FS2. Amongst all the outlets that are reporting these rumors, and Tony Khan, as we mentioned, also just fanning the flames with dropping breadcrumbs here or there, it definitely means that we are likely looking at Max as being part of this deal. Tony himself said that streaming has been a part of negotiations, didn't specifically mention that pay-per-views were the streaming that he was referring to, but almost all outlets now are saying that as soon as January, we could see AEW pay-per-views on Max, which is great news for all wrestling fans, and maybe even sooner than January, some are saying.
That would be great to get that to happen. That would just be great.
We may know more in a couple of days because it could happen this week that the announcement is made. Likely no later than next week. It's going to be whether Tony decides he's wanting to drop this bomb at Grand Slam or wait until the 5th anniversary show. Those are your next 2 Dynamites. Those are 2 great opportunities. It's supposedly in the can. It's just getting those details out into the public.
I'm telling you, the 5th anniversary show would be the place to drop it. I don't know if Tony can sit on it for that long, though. I don't know if he can.
I don't know that if there's going to be anything that we don't know by the time he announces it, because he's, I mean, right. Every week we know a little more, and I don't know that if he waits 2 more weeks, he won't have, as you said, leaked it all in an interview somewhere.
I don't think he can sit on it that long. I really don't.
Here's another follow-up on one of our opening bell stories from our last show, and that's the pending divorce and domestic violence situation with Nikki Garcia, a.k.a. Nikki Bella, and her husband, Artem. Both members of the couple have yet to say anything on the record about the situation other than Nikki requesting her privacy. However, Entertainment Tonight has reported it was, in fact, Nikki's sister, Bree, who encouraged her sister to file for divorce following Artem's arrest on domestic violence charges. Also, as a follow-up, I'd mentioned in our original story how Artem was seeking spousal support. For clarification and reference, Nikki is reportedly worth around $8 million, and Artem is worth $6 million. Thus, technically, he is eligible for support.
Come on, man. Really? Come on.
She earns more than him. However, Nikki has asked the court to terminate all spousal support, and there's also a law in California where the couple resides that asserts an abuser can be disqualified from receiving alimony if the victim if the person is convicted. So
there we go. Yeah,
more as we know it, unfortunately. Keeping up with the topic of relationships and relationship troubles, Adam Cole's relationship with Britt Baker is reportedly over.
No.
The couple have been together for 7 years, and then both have been off TV for much of the last year with various injuries, Britt only recently returning. Cole's reportedly ready to return, began training for a return, but, you know, obviously there are 2 sides to every relationship story, but the reports coming out of this one are putting the issues and the problems squarely on Baker, who some in these, you know, unnamed people, so you take it with a grain of salt, have been calling her unhinged as of late, which would certainly play into the various backstage stories that have, you know, outside of just her relationship, including her recent suspension, backstage altercation with MJF and Alicia Atout, her prior backstage issues with Thunder Rosa. We know that Britt is returning to TV. They've been promoting it here on the 5th anniversary show here first week of October. So obviously she's not soured her relationship completely, but there's just, you know, sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire, and hate this for the couple and for Adam. But, you know, more on this as we learn it, and if anything comes out official.
Man, yeah. I really wonder about Britt's future in AEW now, considering how Cole is so tight with, you know, so many people in certain positions within the company.
And if she really is burning bridges. I know.
So basically, I'm hearing Britt Baker to WWE, basically confirmed.
Well, how about this? Let's move away from the world of ugly breakups, divorce, domestic violence to something a little more pleasant. What do you say?
Okay. Let's do it.
So Vince McMahon.
I've got the tweet right here. If that's what you're going to cover,
actually, it may not be. It may not be. So
okay.
This could be what I'm reporting. I'm sorry to fool you, of course. Mr. McMahon, the 6-episode documentary series from the people behind the juggernaut that was Tiger King, premieres on Wednesday, September 25th. If you have not heard, but this promises to be a bombshell of a series, as it is clearly an unflinching, unflattering recounting of Vince and his many scandals and controversies, including obviously the more recent falls from grace. Originally, this series, Doug, was one that had Vince and WWE's blessing. So Vince doesn't sit down a whole lot, especially older Vince with reporters. So there's going to be a whole lot of Vince McMahon talking and probably digging his own holes in this thing, I would imagine. And there are also a lot of talking heads that are normal WWE loyalists, like Cena, Hulk Hogan, The Rock. Obviously the series took a turn somewhere in the production when Vince fell from grace, was booted from the company he founded. The Mr. McMahon filmmakers then reached out to Janelle Grant, who is the individual suing Vince, John Laurinaitis and WWE itself for her sexual assault, accusing them of sex trafficking, all this stuff. I'm sure she didn't want to risk her case by, talking to a documentary crew. So there was no interview that materialized with her, though apparently she and the case are mentioned all throughout this this docu-series. I guess it's going to be interesting, Doug, to see exactly how much they had to go back and redo. If this was years in the works with WWE's blessing, does it take a turn on later episodes, or have they weaving in the whole fall from grace throughout?
That's what I'm wondering. Do they set him up as the Mr. McMahon character from day one in it, or do they, tell the story? Because, this popped up in my news feed a little bit earlier. Bleacher Report. I got a notification from Bleacher Report, so I went to X, and Vince did put out a tweet earlier today around 4 or 5 o'clock about this upcoming documentary.
Please read.
I'm not going to go and read the whole thing, but he does say he doesn't regret participating in the Netflix documentary. The producers had an opportunity to tell an objective story about my life and incredible business I built.
Hey, man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, based on early partial cut I've seen, this doc falls short and takes predictable path, conflating Mr. McMahon character with my true self. In short, Vince is saying that he's disappointed because there's, two sides to every story, which, I think a long time ago we learned from Extreme there are actually 3 sides to every story. And, Vince he's not happy with it and is disappointed in it, but does not regret doing what he did. It's just the way they're telling the story.
Now, I mean, devil's advocate here, Vince McMahon, I do believe it's maybe you who through the years have conflated your personal life with the Mr. McMahon character, to the extent that I don't know that the Mr. McMahon character wasn't just an extension of who Vince McMahon really was,
right?
In his real life.
Like JR says, the best wrestlers are their own personalities just turned up to 10 or maybe 12.
And McMahon would have been turned up to 15 because
exactly.
I understand that there's likely going to be some sensational takes by this documentary crew. That's what Tiger King was, but it also did at its heart tell a bizarre story that I think is, going to be similar to what we see with the Mr. McMahon thing. If you're not familiar with Vince McMahon or the crazy carnival world of professional wrestling, this is going to be some bingeable must watch. Like, I can't believe this is really happening. And much of it is going to be in Vince's own words or using clips of Vince through the years that, in retrospect, with all we know now, are pretty damning. Yeah. I know I'll be watching. I can't wait, honestly. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out and how it affects things in the real world. I guess that's where I should maybe end this story is pointing out that Janelle Grant's lawsuit is actually on hold and has been since June, pending a federal, possibly criminal investigation involving the U.S. Attorney's office from the Southern District of New York against Vince McMahon. So if Vince thinks that this Netflix bearing is bad, the real bad may still be coming to him in either a civil court of law or even worse for him, the federal government coming for him again. They may have missed the first time. I don't know that the old man's going to get lucky again.
No, I don't think so. And as a side note, Janelle Grants, I saw a interview with her lawyer, I think last week, where she was basically saying, I'm paraphrasing here, but that Janelle's story needs to be told where she is the star of the story, not a second character or a supporting character in somebody else's story, and which she did not want her client to be in this Vince McMahon documentary. She wants her story to be told, not just an afterthought in somebody else's story.
And I'm glad you mentioned her also, because another item I didn't have in the news, but I did see this past week as well, is that Miss Grant has hired a public relations firm, anticipating that there's going to be a lot of opportunities and or requests coming as a result of this documentary. And it's the same PR firm that had represented the the victims of Epstein, and I'm maybe even Weinstein. Like, we have some folks who have dealt with some of the worst situations, and obviously they have chosen to take her on as a client, which also might tell you all you need to know about the company that Vince McMahon is very likely about to fall in.
Yeah, and it makes more sense that her attorney signaling that her story's to be told, as her story. Which is opening up opportunities for her. We'll see how those pans out, but I just got a bad feeling about Vince this time around.
We will continue to follow this. I am seriously going to move to some lighter news now. Per Peacock's spokesperson, as part of their agreement with WWE, SmackDown's complete past season library is available, while new episodes are going to be available 30 days after airing on USA. With Raw, on the other hand, new episodes, while they'll be available 30 days after airing, at least through the end of the year, as long as they're on USA. Once 2024 is over with, it's a whole different thing. Peacock is no longer going to be the host of the libraries of NXT or Raw when those individual contracts expire. For NXT, that happened last week. So no word on where the NXT library will end up being hosted. As for Raw, what's going to happen with it is that those episodes will disappear from Peacock on December 2nd, which about a month before the move to Netflix. Who knows? Is the Raw library of the past also going to go to Netflix? That wasn't clear. We'll have to wait and see on that. Another wait and see, Doug, is Miro has reportedly requested his release from AEW, even though he has about a year and a half left on his contract. Miro missed most of this year, last year, rehabbing an injury, but is apparently healthy now. Just got nothing for you. He signed to AEW back in 2022. I think it goes without saying that his AEW run has not been what any of us thought it could or should be. Right from the whole being introduced as the best man at a wedding to this bizarre, we're not using you. This is not what we wanted for the former Rusev.
No, it is not. And, I have some mixed feelings about the whole thing about, tacking extra time onto folks' contracts, because from a business standpoint it makes sense, but do you really want talent working for you that doesn't really want to work? Or, I shouldn't say doesn't really want to work, but doesn't really want to work there.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't want to work for you.
Yeah, I mean, it seems almost childish, from a non-business perspective, to just hold on to this person. Well, you've been out, you owe me this, we've been paying you. I don't know. There's some
from
mixed
a business
there.
Perspective that Rusev, as he was known up until 2020, lost his job under the Vince McMahon era. Now that it's Triple H's baby, I can understand where Tony might, from a business perspective, know where Rusev's next move would be.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you're not doing anything with him. You've got nothing going on.
Literally doing nothing with him.
Yeah, exactly. So why hold on to him when he was injured not on your watch necessarily, Tony, but why hold on to these talents? Yeah, and it goes the same way here. AEW, WWE, any promotion. Why hold on to these folks? if especially if you have nothing for them, what are you doing? What are you holding on to?
The NWA now has a home. The Tampa Bay Times is reporting that NWA is going to be filming episodes of NWA Power at the studios of WEDU PBS there in Tampa. The set can hold between 100 and 150 fans. Filming begins there in the start of October. So I love the way that Power has that old school studio wrestling vibe. Actually having a home in a TV studio is so reminiscent of the old era of professional wrestling. It should really add to the whole presentation. So that can be kind of cool.
Now that absolutely, that whole thing that Collision had going on, absolutely not. But that, yes.
Finally, another sort of old school fans have reason to rejoice, and a wrestling tradition is back. In 1985, we got Saturday night's main event on NBC, and it was such a big deal. WWE and NBC have announced the iconic Saturday night main events return December 14th, 8 p.m. on NBC, simulcast live on Peacock. The special is going to be at Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum on Long Island, which was the site of the very first Saturday night's main event that nearly 40 years ago. This is the first of what will be 4 quarterly primetime specials that will air on NBC and Peacock as part of WWE's new 5-year domestic rights partnership with NBC Universal, which officially kicked off, of course, with SmackDown debuted over on the USA Network just a few short weeks ago. And with that, Doug, it's time to shift to our main event.
I almost worked at the black and gold NXT t-shirt tonight. And I say almost because I couldn't find it in my big giant mound of wrestling t-shirts, which there are many.
Have you lost your house? How could you not find?
Well, once upon a time, they all hung neatly in my closet. But, my closet between my day job clothes and my wrestling attire, not my ring attire, because that's something completely separate.
You don't want to see. I want to see Doug. We'll have a special episode where Doug busts out his ring attire.
But there's just not enough room, so I had to move them from my closet where they hang nicely, and I can easily find them and put them in drawers. And then I filled up an entire chest of drawers with them, so it was just too much of a challenge to find it. So I'm just going with pro wrestling tees. So.
I imagine that many of those t-shirts that Doug just referenced are old school NXT black and gold brand t-shirts of stars from that era.
So many times, because the old school like NXT t-shirts have a little like black and gold label like on the side of them, so you can easily identify them as NXT t-shirts. I can't tell you how many of those I've picked up thinking, oh, this is it. Nope. This is it. Nope.
That's a good place to start, because the golden age of NXT is that black and gold brand. It was
absolutely
when wrestling became cool again, before it was mainstream cool again. It was really the Triple H laboratory, where fans went from being quite honestly apathetic for the Triple H character after his long run as a wrestler on television to all being Triple H fanboys based on just how different his style of wrestling and writing booking was from what was being seen on Raw and SmackDown, which fans in general were rejecting at the time. So if you love, and most fans seem to really love what WWE is doing now, all you need to do, even though you can't find it apparently now, is go back to those old NXT libraries, because that was the boilerplate. That template is what Triple H is now doing now on a wider scale on the main brands. That was what the black and gold brand was, and that's why it is held with such high regard and fondness by wrestling fans.
Absolutely. That black and gold, I think that was AEW before AEW was AEW, really. I mean,
it really was. Yeah. I mean, it was not just a precursor to what Triple H is doing now. It is a precursor to what AEW did when AEW was hot, bringing in indie talent, international talent, young, unknown talent, mixing it in a blender and putting it on TV. Triple H was doing that on NXT. Black and gold was it, man. It was the show to watch if you were a wrestling fan that you didn't complain about the way you did the other shows you watched at the time.
Absolutely. And it wasn't like an epic 3-hour show. Thank God. Yeah.
It was a way to get Peacock subscriptions. Is how it started out. It was exclusive to the streaming service, and I'm sure you are, and many of our viewers are also of a mind of that's why we signed up.
Yeah.
Between the pay-per-views and NXT, that was the main reasons to have the WWE network back in the day.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think we've made that argument before. You can probably go back through our archives and find that argument that,
Yeah,
for NXT, black and gold, old school NXT, and the pay-per-views alone, that's why you spend your money. What was it, $9.99 a month back in the day? They had the big flag.
yeah, $9.99.
Yeah, well worth the money for NXT alone. But you throw in NXT and those pay per views, like you said. I mean, there's a no brainer for wrestling fans.
So why was ultimately, Triple H successful? I think that because you were a small fish, small pond, little corner of the WWE universe on the fledgling new network, and quite honestly, Vince didn't care, and that's why
That's
Triple H was allowed to flourish. Is that Vince was focused on the old school, right? The old school Carney he is. Like, it's all about the TV,
mm-hmm.
not the streaming. I mean, NXT was built in Vince's mind as a way to funnel and create talent, a pipeline to the main rosters. That is why Triple H both succeeded and ultimately why he failed.
Yeah, because it was essentially a televised, what was it, FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, or OVW before Florida Championship. It was essentially that. They just put a product on just as some filler, no doubt, in the early days. Send the son-in-law down there and let him play around and do whatever. I'm not worried about that. I'm up here. We're making TV up here, kids.
If you want to look at the jump the shark moment, maybe for me, it might be when they did move off the network to become another show on USA, because not that there was anything wrong with that idea. And in fact, they produced some great television. They expanded to 2 hours, which they had enough talent that, I mean, okay, I can see that too. The problem is that you're not going to get the same ratings as Raw or SmackDown. You are the third smaller brand, but once you're a TV product that sells ads, now you're on Vince McMahon's radar. And that's where things really broke down for Triple H when it comes to the original black and gold. I mean, let's be just truthful about it. Like, NXT in Vince's mind was the pipeline between the Performance Center and the main roster. And NXT at the time was rather notorious for having talent that were big deals in NXT either fail miserably or just underperform and not be special once they made it to Raw or SmackDown. And to be fair, some of that wasn't on Triple H. I mean, you can do what all you want over here. Once they're in someone else's hands, that I would argue is kind of on Vince.
Oh, absolutely.
For the way they were booked.
I really don't see any blame that could possibly fall to Triple H, because, I mean, Shinsuke Nakamura.
That's my big example of an underachiever. Asuka, Shinsuke. They were so special on NXT, and then they were just another wrestler when they got to the main roster. Andrade. Keith Lee. I mean, and then just total flameouts that just not only underperformed, just were there and gold. And your Adam Roses, your Authors of Pain, your No Way Jose. Like, some of these acts that were big deals in the Performance Center didn't translate to the main roster. Some of it might be, trying to take a character in front of a small audience and in front of a mainstream audience. But I do agree with you that for the most part, even though some of those acts, it should be noted, whether it's the new Authors of Pain being back or whatever, some have found their footing. Others maybe failed to produce enough. But still, I think the main thing that you can say there is it was Triple H handing things off to Vince and Vince's team where there was a disconnect.
There's definitely a disconnect, because you would change people's names, you would change their characters. Karrion Kross's debut on the main roster in his gladiator gimp suit or whatever it was. I don't even know what was going on there. He looked like something crawling out of the trunk in Pulp Fiction to go wrestle. I don't know what he was thinking.
I
I
really
don't get
wish
it.
Doug would have been able to have located his Gladiator Gimp T-shirt tonight. Unfortunately, that will also have to wait. I mean, to be fair, I mean, if you want to be fair about it, is that if the idea was we're going to have stars coming out of NXT, that really wasn't happening. And the blame is obviously on Vince's side, not Triple H's side, but still, it was happening. So from a business standpoint, it does make some sort of sense that we need to rethink what we're doing down there. Because the ratings weren't, stellar on head-to-head against AEW, because AEW was then firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. AEW was new, and we had like a new tribal wars brewing too. But AEW got to go against NXT, arguably the third and definitely not primary brand of WWE, versus like the young upstart, that the underdog that everybody's behind because they have so much NXT talent.
And again, I think that points to the jump the shark moment for Black and Gold having to be on USA and behave like a Vince McMahon produced USA television show. Vince's ego couldn't handle, even if it was the third brand and was never meant to be a competition for AEW. Once they started going head to head and they were losing to the new kids, it didn't take Vince very long to suddenly become interested in what Triple H was doing, and he tore down Triple H's baby.
Indeed, he did. And I don't know about other viewers. I know it's not the same for you, but for me, that killed NXT. And I struggle this day, even though there's so much great talent that exists there, I struggle to this day to consistently watch NXT.
Right. So this is where this main event topic is going to exist. If for no one else watching, this is an intervention for my partner Doug, an appeal to you, sir, as to why NXT is worth your 2 hours a week. Because yes, the 2.0 era. I mean, I get it. I understand it. It was all young, all unknowns. No indie talent, no older talent to speak of. That's what Vince changed. We need to be the guys and gals we're going to invest in need to have possible futures here, not just taking up space on a roster, not a separate brand. It became the minor leagues. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. The minors before you get called up to the majors. That's at least what 2.0 was. That's what Vince's idea for NXT was. There was some benefit to this. I don't throw it out completely, because there are some great talents that emerged that maybe wouldn't have emerged as quickly. Your Braun Breakers, your Carmelo Hayes, for example. But, they started to latch on, and the 2.0 brand did get some footing. Then, of course, comes Vince's fall from grace, and that provided an opportunity. With Vince no longer in the picture, NXT could then be anything. And that's where we talk now about where HBK deserves credit, because the main thing that has worked for HBK's advantage is his partner. Unlike what Triple H had, HBK's partner isn't Vince. HBK's partner is Triple H himself.
Yeah, it's the other half of DX.
It's the other half of DX.
That's right. Thumbs up. Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, and you're so right about that, because the pipeline that exists now is a true pipeline. It's like we start them here, we build them here, I pass them on to you. Not we start them here, we give them their basics, we teach the kid how to drive, and then you go and you buy them a new car and let them drive something completely different when they get to the main roster. That's not what's happening. They're driving the same car when they get to the main roster now, and it makes sense.
Before you had here's what we're taking, and we're going to hand it off to someone who has a completely different view of the business and different philosophy. Triple H and HBK are not only lifelong friends, but they have a similar enough background and philosophy on the business that HBK is able to do things in the lab and then pass them off to Triple H, who completely understands and supports what HBK is doing. So there is a synergy there that Triple
Absolutely.
H never had before. And I honestly think that is the biggest thing that makes this current NXT the perfect blend of black and gold Triple H philosophy and then 2.0 belief of it needs to be about making young stars. And I think that that's something that Triple H himself wasn't even able to do because he didn't have that synergy. That's why this version of NXT is so worth everyone's time.
And you know, I think there's, for me in my brain anyway, there's that disconnect from black and gold to the color splash that was NXT 2.0, you know, and watching stars like Braun Breaker, which I've always said, just call the kid a Steiner and be done with it. You know, I get that his name is, he's a Brock too, isn't he? There's so many Brocks, and no, he's a Bronson. That's right. And it's Scott Steiner's son that's a Brock. But anyway, yeah, they're just call the kid a Steiner. You know, live with that. Let it happen. And we all know who he is. But I'm rambling now. But that disconnect from the color splash to it's so hard for me to get past it. And I think it almost needs a reboot in my mind because I watch and I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are. I need like a new 52 reboot where the universe resets and everything goes again from zero, or like
that's
Raw
again
Raw after WrestleMania reset kind of thing. You know, that's what I need. I need to be told jump on here and go forward from here.
That's where I appeal to you and any other lapsed NXT fans to tune back in, because that's one way that HBK and the HBK era is like Triple H. He seems to think of NXT as a separate brand, as can be seen by NXT possibly relaunching as a touring unit, as well as their, you know, along with their upcoming CW premiere shows. They're going to be touring, but they may be touring completely. Another way he's like Triple H is you will know who people are, because it's the old black and gold idea of taking veteran talent and assigning them to the NXT brand. Even more than Triple H did, he's also taking main roster talent who maybe need a fresh, look, and has, whether it's the Good Brothers, using them to enhance NXT younger talent, bringing in major stars like a Becky Lynch. The entire bloodline showed up on NXT a couple of weeks ago to advance the bloodline storyline on NXT. Like you're not going to be lost. The current NXT champion, Ethan freaking Page, is your NXT champion. So HBK is definitely of the mind that Triple H was, that having these veteran hands working with the young talent not only gives this brand legitimacy, because it isn't like the 2.0 where you have to learn everybody on the entire roster. There is a lot. I mean, they brought back Sean Spears. The Motor City Machine Guns apparently are going to be reportedly debuting there. It's very old school black and gold philosophy of here's these young guys you should know, and here's a bunch of folks on the main roster that are making appearances. And in the meantime, you're going to learn who Braun Breaker is, which is exactly what Triple H had wanted to do, just didn't have the same support.
Yeah, with folks like Motor City Machine Guns and Lucha Bros, which it sounds like they are going to be showing up on the NXT brand too. I mean, that's. And I have to say, every time I watch NXT, I'm like, wow, this is really good. I don't know what's going on storyline wise. I don't know what's going on. And I always feel like it's going to, like I said, it's going to take me too long to like catch up and figure things out. But I'm like, I need to come back to this and put in the time. I just need to do the time and do the work and watch. But then there's so much wrestling.
There is so much wrestling. That's the problem, is that if you've lapsed, there's so much out there that it's hard to maybe pick it back up. And this is where I want to make sure that people know that this isn't just a recreation of the black and gold. I do think it's the perfect mix of what Vince had tried to do and what HBK is doing with some Triple H philosophy. I want to make sure we give our flowers to HBK though, because that is our topic. And he's not just a clone of what Triple H was doing. There are some areas where he differs from Triple H in the black and gold era in some positive ways. The immediate and obvious success, I think, that needs to be pointed out, and this is not a knock on the original NXT, but HBK is creating stars, which is what Vince had wanted. We already mentioned Carmelo Hayes, but we also have Braun Breaker. On the main roster, we have Tiffany Stratton, Pretty Deadly, Ilya Dragunov, Grayson Waller, Austin Theory, Zoe Starks, Bronson Reed. I mean, these are all people who, one way or the other, have made their way to success on the main roster. These are not just folks that are taking up space on the main roster. Almost all of those folks are flourishing right now, and they originally started with HBK. He's making stars at NXT who are just waiting their call-ups. There's stars there right now that could easily fit into Raw and SmackDown and get over. Your Trick Williams, Cora Jade, Roxanne Perez. My goodness, Roxanne Perez is already fully formed.
It's hearing you talk about it like this, it puts me in mind of like, it's like logical storytelling, really. You start the character here, you start this hero's journey, right? You have, let's say, like, I don't know, like a sci-fi space fantasy trilogy where you start with one thing and it's like, say, a love letter to what's come before, right?
Yeah.
And then what should logically happen then, because you're doing a trilogy, is you build upon that, not have somebody else come in and completely write something completely different for the characters and completely change things, and then have somebody in your third film completely change things again. That's not happening with NXT from what I'm hearing, which is what I think was happening when Vince got his hands into NXT, which is really what turned me away. It's like, okay, well, you did this with them and that's cool, but I'm going to completely pretend like that never even happened, and this is the first time anybody's ever seen them. And then I'm going to run with it and do my own thing.
And again, that isn't on Triple H, but in Vince's mind, we weren't doing good ratings and we weren't making stars. Well, guess what? Under a different leadership, not Vince, but under Triple H's leadership at a different level, HBK is now taking NXT. He's got good viewership. The ratings are solid. He's putting on some of the best TV on all of wrestling for the week, and he's creating stars. All those folks have become stars, which is what NXT was always meant to do and never was quite doing. It is now actually doing it. And this is another way where I think he differs from Triple H, or at least the Black and Gold brand, what Black and Gold was able to accomplish. I know I mentioned Cora Jade, Roxanne, obviously, Tiffany Stratton, female stars, right? And I've made this point to you. On the, between those stars on the main roster and those stars I just mentioned who are big names already in NXT, that is just a small sampling. You can watch NXT on any given week, and 80% of the show is focused on female talent. I swear this is the American version of Shimmer. It is the best female division in the sport of professional wrestling. In addition to the ones I mentioned, you have Kalani Jordan. I love me some Kalani Jordan. Ariana Grace, Fallon Henry, Adriana Rizzo, Brinley Reese, Lash Legend, Lola Vice, Carly Bright, Maddie Rinkowski, Danny Porter, Nikita Lyons, Sol Ruka, Gigi Dolan, Izzy Dame, Stevie Turner, Jakara Jackson, JC Jane, Tatum Paxley, Thea Hale, Wendy Chu, the recently debuted Julia, who's got the CM Punk seal of approval when he showed up on NXT. And they all have storylines, Doug. They all have separate characters that are very distinct. That's hard to do. Normally the women do not get, you have one women's feud and then some maybe backstage vignettes with some other ladies, and the rest of, in the past in WWE have been interchangeable. These ladies all have distinct personalities. HBK is killing it with a female division down there.
Well, he is the Heartbreak Kid, but I kid. I was just there. I had to do it. But, because again, the NXT I've watched recently, I think I've come away raving about the women more than the guys.
Sol Ruka, man. You were a big Sol Ruka guy.
Yes, my goodness. I really have no excuse other than there's not enough time in the day for me to watch all the wrestling that I need to watch.
Back to his gear again. He can't find his gear, folks.
I can't find my gear. How am I supposed to get in the ring and get street clothes, man? Come on. You've been there, right?
You mentioned a Heartbreak Kid. I'm glad you did, because I think that's something we need to talk about when it comes to the HBK era that is NXT and how HBK has saved NXT. I think that Shawn's demons and his past may actually be contributing to his current success. His ability as a leader, I honestly think, is informed by his own personal issues and demons that he dealt with and squared away through the years. When you're the head of a wrestling roster, especially one like NXT, I mean, there's big personalities in sports and wrestling, and unusual folks you have to try to deal with and get folks to work together that are big personalities. NXT, I think, would be to the 10th degree because they're all so young, and you have to get them all on the same page. And Shawn has been there. He's been that problem child for others. He has seen just about everything there is. And I honestly think his substance abuse issues and his attitude issues and all of that probably make him better equipped than the average writer and booker when it comes to dealing with these young personalities and the problems they may be having, some of them leaving families or countries at young ages and moving to Florida to try their hand at this bizarre circus life.
That's a very good point. I recently rewatched all of Heels on Netflix. And
nice.
Yeah, because who needs sleep? Because I have time to watch wrestling related television, but not actual wrestling. But I'd seen those characters before. I was familiar with them. I didn't need a jumping on point. But it kind of makes me think of the Wild Bill character there, who's basically modeled after Ric Flair, but has these slight redeeming qualities and almost his own like redemption arc there, where he tries to take on more of a leadership role, especially towards the end of the second season as they're kind of crescendoing up there. I mean, he is much more a Ric Flair than a reformed HBK, but there are those flashes there of exactly what you're talking about, and that does make so much sense. That don't do this because I did this. That's let's go this way with you.
This is a redemption story. I mean, honestly, it's not only the redemption of NXT, it's the final chapter of HBK's full circle redemption. I mean, yes, if Brett could forgive him, and obviously he's been in good graces for a long time, a changed person, but now what is he doing? He's paying that forward, and the second chances and stuff he's given, and he's given NXT a second chance at succeeding as a brand. And I do think that having gone through the fire as he had is helping him now. And here's another thing I'd want to mention as far as how HBK is saving NXT. This is a new world of WWE. This is the TKO world. This is the corporate world of WWE. HBK, as a reformed person who's been through what he's been through, is a good company man. He's good. Yeah. He's good with the PR side of things. Those handoffs are coming seamlessly between he and Triple H. I'm sure they talk and communicate much better. So I think that having a good company man leading one of your brands gives you more confidence in this new corporate environment. I think that you're going to have success with this brand in a way that it was a little bit of Wild West there for a while with NXT.
So let me just throw this out. HBK, a true redemption arc for him in NXT, coming full circle. And I totally agree with being a great leader to all these kids that are down there. There's somebody else waiting in the wings right now to, take that crown from HBK, who could use a bit of redemption in a lot of wrestling fans, probably because you either love or you hate CM Punk at this point. And I think there's no in between. Is NXT a potential redemption for CM Punk in the future?
Doug, he just showed up on NXT, and he's going to be on NXT the first episode, but he just showed up and he knew the product. He has been mentoring Roxanne Perez. Truly, he shows up, and the young talent, or you can look at their Instagram stories and you can see them all hugged up to CM Punk. It's not the same guy that was in AEW. We know it's in him, but if you want to talk a redemption story, why not try it in the petri dish that's a little smaller? Let him work with young kids who could learn from. I mean, there's a lot of transferable talent that CM Punk has on the microphone and in the ring. Under the right environment, a happy CM Punk could be a benefit as a coach down the line. And let's face it, he's got more miles behind him than he does ahead in the ring. He
Mm-hmm.
breaks down a lot in the ring. I think that an NXT could make a lot of sense for him if you want to keep him in the WWE fold, keep him happy, and give him something that he actually could do well if motivated to do so. Obviously, it's got to be a short leash, but why not? Why not try it?
I think the WWE environment, especially like you said in the TKO era, is a much better environment for him, because I've said it before, I don't think AEW, Tony Khan in particular, knew how to handle a CM Punk when he's full on CM Punk. I think the closest anybody knew how to handle that was Joe, and I think that was, evident at All In, in Wembley. Joe knew how to handle that because Joe calmed that situation down, got Punk out there, they had a great match, and then Punk walked after that. But Joe knew how to handle that. I think there's many people, including Triple H and Shawn Michaels, both, who know how to handle that.
This won't be just Triple H doing it. If he goes to NXT, it'll be, again, back to whose baby this is. Triple H trusts his lieutenant, and I think his lieutenant has the same demeanor and personality. And again, if you want to talk about someone who couldn't have been more difficult to deal with, HBK knows what CM Punk is, because HBK once was CM Punk before there was a CM Punk, and he redeemed himself. I think he would have the patience and the demeanor to maybe that could be his greatest achievement of all, if he turns CM Punk into a backstage leader. But to put a bow on it, so we can get to our big finish, the future of NXT, the future breakouts. Obviously, we still have some challenges that HBK has to address, and that is this move to the CW. That's big. There's going to be expectations with this. What's that going to look like? How are the ratings going to fare on what is maybe a harder spot to find than a USA? Touring is something they want to do. Obviously, we've talked in recent weeks about some issues with moving tickets. So there's still hurdles that HBK has to jump. He probably appreciates that it's not, all signed, sealed, delivered in a nice, pretty package. Like, he's still got things to accomplish. Those are the next big things, I think, that are going to be challenges that will ultimately prove just how far he can take this brand. But I think he's equipped for it. I think that there's some next big stars we need to look out for. Trick is a star. Roxy, a star. Cora Jade, a star. Nikita Lyons, even though she's been off TV and injured for a while, a star. The young OG, if you've not seen Javon Evans' work, he will impress you in the same way that Sol Ruka has impressed you. Sol Ruka is on that list. Obafemi is like a beast who is learned so much so quickly. It's scary how much he's improved in just the last year. These are all names, if you don't know, it's reason to start watching NXT, because the future of WWE is ready right now down there at the Performance Center. And a lot of that is all kudos to HBK, the Heartbreak Kid, killing it with the new NXT brand. Doug, did I convince you?
One more question for you, and this goes for me. This goes for me and anybody like me. Where's my jumping on point? Do I just do the work? Do I just jump in? Do I jump in on a?
I think you can jump in.
Is it just Tuesday? Yeah. It's Tuesday nights, right? We're still Tuesday nights. CW.
I bet you anything that once the CW move happens, October 1st. They know that they're going to have a whole new audience that may not have watched them on USA. Might be a good jumping in point. You will know the talent. You will know international talent like Julia. If you've watched,
her V Trigger, my goodness, that knee.
You know what Evan can do. Yeah. I'm sorry, Ethan Page, who was wasted in AEW. Ethan Page is doing great work right now, career best work in NXT. You know what the Machine Guns are. You know what the Lucha Bros are. Axiom is someone to watch out for down there. He is going to be a huge star. There is so much between what you know and what you will fall in love with, like you did Sol Ruka, like you will Javon Evans. There's so much that I think that any point is a good jumping off point, but that move to the CW may be the perfect opportunity.
It definitely sounds like that's the perfect opportunity because, like you say, not just for the redeemers who are coming back trying to find that redemption in it, who know it's there, but the new audiences that's next Tuesday, August 1st or October 1st, right?
Yeah,
Next
next
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
That seems like the great reboot, the jumping on point.
Doug, you got your homework.
I've got a lot of homework, Kevin.
Jump in and then come back and tell us what you think.
All right, sounds good.
With that, I'm going to hit a big finish, and I'll start with the botch of the week because it's easy and quick for me. We're getting ready for Raw here in a few minutes. Raw last week, poor Jey Uso. He did a great run-in to save the day during the Raw main event, then had to awkwardly stand there just short of the ring. I'm like, why is he not making the save? Why did he stop? Well, of course, that's because Braun Breaker could hit him with the spear from the side. On replay, his expression is almost comical. Like, you can see him like, come on. These things happen. I know.
Yeah,
it's just unfortunate, but it was kind of funny. Doug?
So, last week we get the news that, Raw's going from 3 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
This week we get the news that SmackDown is going from 2 to 3 hours. And I got to call that a botch. I thought we had it. Somebody figured it out. We don't need that. And USA said, yeah, we still do. We still need a 3-hour, wrestling show on.
Is it going to be 3 hours permanently?
I think so, yeah. I think that's the plan going forward.
No. Oh, I haven't heard this. I've been away, as you know, but this is now that's a true botch. Now I'm disappointed.
I mean, I hope I misunderstood that, but yeah, that's what I got out of it. Raw goes from 3 to 2, and SmackDown USA said, yeah, no, we still want a 3-hour wrestling show. Hey, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, please. Call me out on it.
Please, Doug, be wrong. Please be wrong about this. That is a botch.
It would not be the first time.
Performance of the week.
Performance of the week, for me, man, I really love that cinematic outside of the cinematic era stuff and the promo with Roman and Cody, where they're, that stuff's great. That's some great, just good storytelling. And, Roman is just, he is the original tribal chief. He does activate, just function in God mode. He really does. And, go back 2 years ago or even a year ago, I don't think you would never hear me saying things like this, but he's just on another level. He really is.
Man, I'm glad I saw that today, and I couldn't agree with you more. Could you argue that maybe it was a little overproduced or dramatic with the music and the media? Yes, but there was nothing about it that did not work at all for me. It was just so well done by both men and Kevin Owens watching. Like, the whole thing just worked for me.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad you mentioned it because I saw that today. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to call that out. So since you did, I'm going to go a different route, and I'm going to call out the WWE graphics team. Over the summer, they added these great infographics, and we haven't mentioned them on the show. And it's like tonight's headlines, match outcomes earlier in the show, breaking news coming up late. Like, they're all things put on the screen throughout the show that are both recaps, previews, in case you missed it. I love this. It just makes it feel more like a big deal news sports broadcast. And now they've even expanded that over the last couple of weeks. They've included each week, at least once, they'll throw up there, here's a graphic that breaks down your announced team, including who's on play-by-play, who's your analyst, who's your ring announcer, who are your backstage reporters. These are all little things that add up. These details just add up, make just enhance the presentation. They're not only helpful, but they just give the broadcast just a more realistic sports feel, which I love and appreciate.
Cool.
Match of the week, Doug.
I'm going to go wrestling adjacent. Yeah, earlier I mentioned that, I'd rewatched Heels recently, both seasons, and I'm going to say the season finale match in the first season, because both matches are great that lead up, both story arcs. See, woohoo, balloons! Let's hear it for the DLW and Crystal.
Oh, I love Crystal.
Don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I need to figure out what's going on with NXT. You folks who haven't seen Heels need to go watch Heels. It's on Netflix now, and it's easy binge watch for any wrestling fan, hands down.
So
How
for
about
me,
you,
my
Kevin?
match, I'm going, well, okay, first of all, Jade Cargill is a star. She looks like one. We all know that. However, she
Absolutely.
is still learning. So it was nice last week to be reminded just what her partner, Bianca Belair, can be capable of as a singles wrestler, because we've seen her in tag teams for so long now. That match she had with Io Sky was that reminder. The two women put on a heck of a match on Raw. Got me excited for the eventual breakup of Belair and Jade, and the money that's going to be made when these two go out head to head once Jade is ready. Kudos to that match. Both of those ladies, watch it if you haven't. And with that, Doug, we can get people off in Raw in time, as we promised.
There you go. It's 8 o'clock. Folks, go watch Raw. Thanks for dropping by.
Our next show is on Sunday, and we'll see you then.
See ya.